Good afternoon, students. Today we are going to talk about mathematics, what you need to understand and know and study. Always use your study guide. The information that I'm going to give you today is only a summary. We must always remember that mathematics, we must know the rules, the laws, the formula, and work step by step, showing our working. And for your examinations, assignments, you always need a ruler, a sharp pencil, protractor, pair of compasses. You are going to use it for constructions and all the measurements that you have to take. So, for the beginning, we are going to do arithmetic, algebra, graphs, trigonometry, as well as geometry. You can not only study arithmetic or algebra. You have to study your graphs as well as trigonometry as well as geometry. So I will include everything in the slides that I'm going through. On your own time, in your own time, you can carry on and go through all the information again. It's only a summary. In mathematics, all the sums are totally different. So these are the basic informations that I'm going to give you. There you see my cell phone number, you can contact me. So the first part is about the numbers. There are complex numbers, which are the real numbers as well as the imaginary numbers. And there are some examples. Real numbers exist out of irrational numbers as well as rational numbers. And then rational numbers will have integers as well as fractions. So the next one, we have negative numbers and counting numbers. 0 is a counting number as well as natural numbers are also counting numbers. Then we get on the natural numbers 1 and the prime numbers and composite numbers. Then we must always know our square numbers. For example, 1, because 1 is 1 times 1. 4 is 2 times 2. 9, 3 times 3, and so we can carry on. So those are making a square. The cube numbers, the number 3 times multiply itself. For example, 1 is a cube number as well. 1 times 1 times 1 is also 1. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. Then 27 will be 3 times 3 times 3. There you see the relationship between the natural numbers, the factors, the prime factors. And there are the methods how we can work them out. Then we see the multiples. It's a different times tables, multiply. And the LCM, which means the lowest common multiple. And number 5, the HCF, the highest common factor. There are some examples that you can do. You can do it on paper while you are going through your slideshow. Then there are also sequences, pattern of numbers. So the pattern of numbers in the first one is 1, 4, 9, 16. So the term, in short we can say it's N, is 1, term 2, term 3, term 4. The formula for the nth term is N to the power 2. Then you see the sequences, how we can find the answer. You can do it on your own and see whether you can find the answers. But it is given, so you can control yourself and make sure it's right. Then we get the squares and the square roots and the cubes. There you see the square, for example, x squared. The square root, there you see the symbol. For example, the square root of 36 is equal to 6. A cube will be x times x times x So x to the power 3. The directed numbers, we get negative numbers as well as positive numbers. And don't think negative numbers are difficult, it's just numbers. When you are working with negative and positive numbers, there are addition and subtraction with the signs that you know. Addition and subtraction, the signs are staying the same. 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. And if you have minus 4 plus minus 3, that will give you minus 7. If the signs are different, you subtract the numbers and take the sign in front of the biggest number. For example, 3 minus 8 will be equal to minus 5. And minus 2 plus 10 will give you 8. If you work it out on your calculator, you will find it's the same. Multiplication, there you see it, the even numbers or the odd amount. For example, at the bottom of the page, minus 2 times minus 1 times minus 3 is equal to minus 6. There are some practical examples of the temperature. Then we get vulgar and decimal fractions and percentages. You see the complex, the table, or complete the table. You can use your calculator. A vulgar fraction will be 1 divided by 4, and the calculator will give it to you as 0.25. The percentage will be 25%. To one decimal place, it means 0.3, for example. If it's 2 decimal places, for example, 0.25. If you have to round off to 3 decimal places, it is 0.125. Ordering. Ascending order is from small to bigger. Descending order is from bigger to smaller. Standard form, we also call it the scientific notation. Very, very small numbers, like the one that you see there. If you write it in standard form, it will be 2.5 times 10 to the power negative 6, because it's a very small number. For very big numbers, as the one that you see there, it will be 2.5 times 10 to the power 8. You count from the 5 plus all the zeros to get to the 8 places. The 4 rules we know about Polp Math, brackets, of, division, multiplication, addition and subtraction. Then you have rounding to a special decimal place. Start counting always. For example, 1, 2,283. 2 decimal places, then we look at the 8. But we are also looking at the 3. So it stays 2,28. And rounding to a significant figure, SF in short, 2 significant figures. For example, 028,59, rounded off to 2 significant figures, 29. The 8 becomes 9 because of the 5, which is bigger than 4. Right, then we have ratio, proportion and rate. The ratio, 2 or more numbers with the same unit compared with each other. There you see the different calculations that could be done. You can simplify, you can divide, you can increase, make it more, or decrease when you are making it less, and given ratio and one outcome. There you see the proportion, direct proportion. Look at the graph. It's a straight line graph. Straight line, direct proportion. The inverse, the indirect proportion, has a curved graph, as you see there. Normally you have to read something off your graph. Then the rate, numbers with different units are compared, for example, speed, kilometers per hour, or the fuel consumption, kilometers per liter. There is an example. Express the speed of 120 kilometers per hour in meters per second. 120 kilometers times 1000 divided by 1 hour times 60 times 60, because there are 60 minutes in 1 hour and 60 seconds in 1 minute. Then you can use your calculator. Percentages. Expressing one quantity as a percentage of another. For example, A over B, the percentage will be then divided by 100 and times the given quantity. There you see the increase. For example, the increase a price of $65 by 40%. So 40 over 100, 100 is a percentage, times 65, that's equal to 26. So it will be 65 plus 26. When you decrease, you reduce the price of 65 by 40%. So you work out again the 40% of 65, which is 26. So then you subtract the 26 from the 65. So increase, it's getting more. Decrease, it's getting less. Then measures. Length and area and volume. You must learn this, study this. The areas, for example, kilometers per square kilometers, square meters. The volume is meters to the power 3. Right? How we find the volume, how we find the area, how we find the mass. Go through those examples. Time. We know that 1 hour has 60 minutes and 1 minute has 60 seconds. We always start with a 12 o'clock on the clock, and then we go to clockwise midday and afternoon PM and midnight 12 o'clock in the night. That's the 12-hour clock. If we have the 24-hour clock, then the morning 6 o'clock, midday between 11 and 13, and the afternoon between 2 and 6, in other words 14 hour and 18 hours, midnight 24 hour. So that's a 24-hour clock. Money. Personal and household finance. Simple interest. You have the principal times the rate times the time divided by 100. And interest we write in short I. Compound interest will be A is equal to P in brackets 1 plus R, the rate, over 100 to the power n. Then we have representation and manipulation. Expressions. There are some examples. That's an expression if it's only 2x plus 3. When you have an equation, there is an equal sign. For example, 2x plus 3 is equal to 5. Algebra expressions. There you have separated and combined. For example, 2a plus 3b minus 5c, there you see the 3 terms. Example number 2, 3y plus 2 in brackets x plus 3, that's only 2 terms. And number 3 has only 1 term because of the multiplication. And there you see the like terms. All the terms are having y in it. The unlike terms have x squared, for example, and x. That is unlike. The rules for the basic 4 operations. You can add the numbers and you keep the sign. You can keep the letters the same. Multiplication. There you have the power, the base, and the index, which is the exponent. Like and unlike terms can be multiplied. Division. The like and the unlike terms can be divided. So you subtract the exponents of like bases and you divide the numbers. So go for examples, do examples and do some of those. Then you will see it's not so difficult. When you have to factorize, there are 4 different types. You can find the common factor. Number 2, you can find the difference between 2 squares. Number 3, there are 3 nomials. So there are 3 numbers involved, or 3 groups. Number 4 is grouping. Grouping, for example, the same terms. There are some examples of common factors. How we find that? The difference between 2 squares. Trinomials. For example, ax squared divided by bx plus c. And grouping, factorize. There you see 4 terms. You can factorize, you can take out the common factor out of the first part and then out of the second part. Solutions of equations and inequalities, writing formula. Linear equations, there is one unknown. Quadratic equations, for example, x squared. Linear equations, for example, 2x plus 4 is equal to 4x plus 8. Then it becomes 2x minus 4x is equal to 8 minus 4. And you simplify to get x is equal to minus 2. When you have 2 unknowns, for example, x and y value in one equation, then you can use substitution or elimination, or you can draw a graph. So there are 3 ways in which you can find 2 unknowns. If you draw a graph, here you see straight line graphs. I hope you all know how to do this. Quadratic equations, for example, ax squared plus bx plus c, there are 2 methods, factorization and the formula. You must learn the formula. So if you can't factorize, you have to use the formula. And your formula is very, very important. It must be written down because you might get a mark for the formula even if you substitute wrong. The formula says x is equal to minus b plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac and everything divided by 2a. At the top you see where the a, b and the c are coming from. And factorization, that is quite easy. There is an example of the formula. Look carefully how it is done. It is not difficult, and please use a ruler when you draw those lines because it's long lines. When you solve linear inequalities, it can be less than or greater than. So if you have to solve for x in this linear inequality, you simplify and then x is greater than minus 5. There's another example, so you can have a look at the other example as well. Because if you divide by a negative number, in this case minus 12, the sign of greater than changes to smaller than, or invert a fraction. Indices. There are the rules. Study your rules and do some examples. There are some examples given, but you have to study this. Very important, number 4, anything to the power 0 is equal to 1. Very simple, remember that. And there at the bottom is also a remember that you have to study. When you have graphs in a practical situation, you have to interpret and use graphs in a practical situation. For example, the marks and the francs that you see there, how you read it off. This is a straight line graph, so it should quite be easy to do this. Remember, if you have to draw a graph, your intervals must be the same from 0 up to 20 and from 20 to 40 the same distance. From 40 up to 60 same distance. Always. So that it is neat and clear and done with a ruler. Kinematics, distance, speed and time. Distance is speed times time. Then speed is equal to distance divided by time. And if you have to find the time, you take the distance divided by the speed. Right there you see an example of walking, stand still, a straight line, horizontal. If you are running and when you run back home. The graphs of functions, there you see the straight line graphs with the formula y is equal to mx plus c. C is the y-intercept. On your y-axis, it will go through c. The m is the gradient. And there is the formula how you can find the gradient. y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. If you have an upward graph, it will be m as a positive. If m, the gradient is 0, it will be a straight line, horizontal line. If it is going negatively, it will go down. So when m is negative, it will go down. There you see the parallel lines. For example, y is equal to 2x plus 3 and y is equal to 2x minus 10. The gradients are the same. Both gradients are 2. Perpendicular lines will have it as m1 times m2 will give you minus 1. For example, y is equal to minus 3 over 2x plus 2. And the other equation, y is equal to 2x plus 5. 3 over 2 times 2 over 3 will give you minus 1. Because it's minus 3 over 2 times 2 over 3. So the reciprocal fractions with different signs. Note that as well. There you see the curved graphs, quadratic equations. If a is positive, you will have a smiley face. If a is negative, it will be an upside down graph. As you see there, the hyperbola, there you see how it works there. If a is positive, it will lie in the first and the third quadrant. If a is negative, the two graphs will lie in your second and fourth quadrant. Cubic graphs. There you see the formula. It looks like that. If a is positive, it goes up and then down and up again. If a is negative, it goes from the top down, up again and down. The other curves, for example, y is equal to ax to the power something, where it is 2 or minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, then you will get a graph like that one. And study this. You might be asked to draw graphs like this. Cartesian coordinates in 2 dimensions. A, if you plot A, first you plot x from the x-axis, your value, and then from your y-axis. Finding the equation of a straight line, the formula is y is equal to mx plus c, where m is the gradient and y is the intercept on your y-axis, c. There you see the curved graphs. You might be asked to complete your table. So you substitute into your formula to find, for example, your y values, some of the y values. And you will see there's a pattern of how you find it. A, B, and C that you have to fill in there will make a pattern. So if we look carefully at the example, you will see it's a smooth curve that you have to draw. You plot your points and then you draw with a free hand your smooth curve with a sharp pencil, neatly, and you label your graph. Right, and then we get to trigonometry, the 3 figure bearings. Measure from north clockwise to the given line. We always start from the north line, 360 degrees or 0. Then we go clockwise to 90 degrees, down, straight down to 180, and then we still go clockwise to 270 degrees, and when you go back and rotate, then it's 360 degrees. Triangles, 90 degrees triangles. Name the sides from the angle given on the angle asked. There you see that part. The ratios, sin is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. Cos will be the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, which is the long side. Tan x is the opposite of the triangle divided by the adjacent. Adjacent means next to it. In a 90-degree triangle, you can find the length of a side, and you can find an angle. Round off all angles always to 1 decimal place. And then you can find the length of a side. Given that you have 2 sides, you can use Pythagoras' theorem. Very easy. And you always round it off to 3 significant figures. Then you have angles of elevation and depression. If you look up, then it is from the horizontal, the elevation. When you look down, it is the depression. And then you see the solving problems in 3 dimensions. The angle between a line and a plane. Look carefully at that example. There are some solutions of how you can find the different angles and the different sides. And again, the angle between 2 planes. You can make it separate and make your drawing. You can draw it, and then it's easy to see what you have to find. If you have the angles between 90 and 360, then it is the cast, the 90 degrees, and all are positive. And the next one, C is cos 360 minus x. T is for tan, 180 plus x. And S is for 180 minus x. So all, and then sin, cos, tan. Cast, cos, all, sin, and tan. Then you have geometrical terms and angle properties. The terms a point, a line, parallel lines, perpendicular lines, bearing, where you start from the north line. The angles, you must learn it. Right angles are less than 90 degrees. A right angle is 90 degrees. Acute angle is between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. The obtuse angles between 90 and 180. There are some examples drawn for you as well. The straight line, we know, is 180 degrees, and the reflex angle will be a bigger angle between 180 and 360 degrees. Study this. Congruency, it is the same, the shape as well as the size. It looks exactly the same, then they are congruent. Similarity, it is the same in shape but not the size. Then they are similar. Look at the example there. Then angle properties. We have revolutions, straight lines, vertical opposite. Look at the diagram and the example. Complementary angles, they add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles, they add up to 180 degrees. There are some questions, you can answer those questions. The angles formed within parallel lines, we get alternate angles. There you can see the diagram of equal in parallel lines. Those 2 angles will be the same size. Corresponding angles, they are equal in parallel lines. And co-interior angles, supplementary in parallel lines. For example, 100 plus 80 will give you 180 degrees. And you have to study this. The angle properties of triangles. We know that the sum of the total of angles is 180 degrees. There you see the exterior angle. Angle A is the same as B plus C. There you see an isosceles triangle. Two sides are equal, the base of two angles are equal. Symmetry line divides the base in equal parts. Equilateral, then all the sides are 60 degrees, all the sides are equal and the angles are all 60 degrees for the equilateral triangle. You also have to study this and the spelling. There are some exercises of properties of quadrilaterals. The square, the rectangle, the rhombus, parallelogram, trapezium, the kite. Go through that and study that as well, not only numbers. Then you have angle properties of polygons. Triangles, quadrilaterals has 4. Pentagon, 5. Hexagon, 5 sides. Heptagon, 7. Octagon, 8. Nonagon, 9. Decagon, 10. Dodecagon, 12 sides. And you have to study this. There you see the regular figures and the irregular figures. The interior angles. The sum of the interior angles. And the exterior angles, the outside angles, how we find that. Then angles in a circle. There you see the diagram. The angle in a semicircle is 90 degrees. Number 2, the angle between the tangent and the radius is 90 degrees. And number 3, the angle at the center of a circle is twice the angle at the circumference of the circle. Look carefully at those diagrams and examples. And then also angles in the same segments are equal, like D and C are equal. And number 5, the angles in opposite segments are supplementary. For example, in this case, the opposite angles, 100 plus 80, will give you 180 degrees. The same with the example there, 70 plus what will give you 180. And when you have two tangents from the same point, they are equal. So, the one is x centimeters, the other one is 7. Then the one that I marked x, it will also be 7 centimeters. Then you have the angles in a circle. Very nice. You work out on your diagram the rules that you know. And you find all the angles until you look for the one that they were asking in the beginning. And you must be able to also give reasons why you say W is 90 and X is equal to 20. And so you can carry on with the solution. So work on your diagram and fill in your answers until you get to the one that was asked. Mensuration, the area and the perimeter, very important, the perimeter as well as the area. There you need to study your formula. It is not given in the question paper. You have to study how you find the perimeter and how do you find the area of the different figures. Quite simple. You will remember this from grade 6, grade 7. The trapezium, the kite, the circle. Study this. The circle, for example, the circumference is equal to 2 pi radius. The area is pi radius square. It is very important that you study these formula before you go on, because you have to know the formula. It is not given. The volume is the area of the base times the height. The surface area is when you are having the flat figure and you have to find the surface area, total surface area of the figure. For example, the cube, the shape of the base is a square, the volume will be S to the power 2 times S. The surface area will be 4 times S times S plus 2 times S to the power 2. There's your cube. Your cuboid is a rectangular figure. The cylinder has a circle at the bottom, or two circles if it's covered. Symmetry, you get two types of symmetry, the line symmetry and rotational symmetry. The line symmetry is a line dividing the figure into symmetrical parts. There is one line of symmetry. Rotational, for example, during a rotation of 360 degrees, the number of times the original figure is seen. So you can turn it around in your imaginary idea and find how many times you have to turn until it will be in the same position again. There are figures. The isosceles triangle, you can draw it for yourself. And the equilateral triangle, the square, the rectangle, the rhombus, parallelogram, the kite, pentagon, hexagon, heptagon. How many lines of symmetry they have and how many times you have to turn it to get the same figure again. Transformations, there are three different types. Reflections and rotation and enlargement. The reflection is the mirror image in a line, the line of symmetry. So you see in a mirror the same figure, exactly the same, but it's turned around. Reflection. Rotation, when you turn it clockwise or anti-clockwise. Enlargement, making use of a scale factor, how many times the figure is enlarged. But it can also be a smaller figure. Then it has a negative SF. Statistics. There is an example written out with the results. You can draw pictures to make the data more visual, like in a bar chart or a pie chart or a pictogram. There you see an example of a bar chart. The pie chart, remember there are 360 degrees in a circle. So there you have the pie chart and there you have the pictogram with pictures. For the statistics, you will need to know the mode, the median and the mean. The mode is the number that occur the most often. Median is arrange the numbers in ascending order and then take the number in the middle or the two middle numbers and divide it by 2. The mean, you take the average, add up all the numbers and divide it by the total frequency. The data, you have the individual data written out or in tables. Here you see some examples of individual data. An example of the mode, the median, the mean. Exactly the same as it is done here. The mean always will give you some problems, so make sure you know how to find the mean. The mode and the median is normally quite easy, but the mean might create problems. Right, and that is the end of the slideshow. Good luck, students. Study your formula, your rules, everything. Make sure about it. Make sure you know your calculator and bring your equipment with you to the examination. And make use of your study guide when you are studying for your examination and when you are doing your assignments. Make sure you use your study guide as well.